Hey everybody, this is Ron and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing another tier list. This time we are going to be looking at all of Swat's weapons. So, starting up, we're going to be talking about the knife. Now, the knife with Swat is actually much better than with a lot of other classes because you do have fallback. With fallback, you get 85% bonus damage with both your knife and your 9mm. That makes the knife actually pretty good for Swat. And very good for using it in the first couple rounds to save up on money so you can buy some of your more expensive stuff. So I'm going to put the knife in C tier. And speaking of the 9mm, this also gives you a second 9mm to start out with SWAT, which is pretty good. You cannot sell the 9mm for the full amount that you would if you found the 9mm on the ground. I believe it's half as much as what you would normally be able to sell dual 9mm back for. But it does make the 9mm I believe the hardest hitting weapon out of all of SWAT's weapons if it's fully upgraded. I believe the 9mm one's fully upgraded and you're running fallback does something like 93 damage a shot, which is pretty good. And having two of them is also pretty good, especially starting out. That allows you to use both these in the early waves and not have to spend money on other guns if you don't want to, or ammo. So I'm going to put the 9mm in B tier for SWAT. Alright, so the Flashbang. The Flashbang is actually pretty good. It's one of the better grenades in the game. It does 125 damage when it goes off. It does fall off as things are further away from the explosion radius. And you can clear small Zeds with this. It also has an extremely high stun chance. And it also has a very short fuse. So throwing it on the ground and then stunning things is pretty good. It's usually the main way that SWAT kills Skrakes and Flesh Pounds. It's actually a pretty good weapon on SWAT. It's one of their better weapons. So for this, I'm going to put the Flashbang in A tier. Alright, so up next is the MP7. Now the MP7 is your starting weapon. It holds 30 rounds, it weighs 4, it does 16 damage a shot, and it has a rate of fire of 950 rounds a minute. So it has a pretty high rate of fire like most submachine guns and pretty low damage. Its weight is pretty nice, and its sights are actually really good. It can either be full auto or semi-auto, which is always nice. It's one of the best starting weapons because it takes care of trash so well, and it does scale surprisingly well. So when fully upgraded, this thing weighs 8, and it does 2.3 times more damage than what its base is, which takes it from 16 and puts it about to 36 or 7, I believe, which is not bad for a submachine gun. Overall, it's actually a pretty decent gun to pick up and use. That being said, it isn't as good as some of the other submachine guns, so I'm going to put this right into B tier. Probably at the high end of B tier, maybe into the low end of A tier, probably A tier on the first couple waves. When you're just fighting trash Zeds, it's quite strong then, but it does tend to fall off as the game goes on. Alright, moving on to tier 2 weapons, we're going to take a look at the Medic SMG first. Now the Medic SMG weighs 3, it does 20 damage a shot, it has 800 rounds a minute rate of fire, it has the ability to heal just like all medic weapons, and it holds a 40 round magazine. Now the Medic SMG is currently in a very, very good spot for SWAT right now. It runs at a very low weight, and it actually upgrades pretty well too. When max leveled, it goes up to a weight of 6, and it reduces its full recharge dart time by 40%, and it increases its damage by 60%, which is a good amount. It makes it go up to about 35, 36 damage a shot, which is pretty nice. Once again, it does have good sights. It's very easy to control. It's a very strong weapon on SWAT, and probably one of their strongest right now, especially since it fits into so many loadouts. So I think I'm going to put the Medic SMG into S tier. It is extremely good with its flexibility. It's also very cost effective for the submachine guns. I put it in B tier for Medic, and I think it belongs in B tier for Medic, but I think it's probably in either A or S tier for SWAT, because it does fit their playstyle so well. Alright, up next we've got the MP5, and the MP5 weighs 4 weight, it has a capacity of 40 rounds in it, and it does 25 damage a shot with an 895 rate of fire to it. The MP5 also scales decently well, going up to an additional 3 weight when maxed out, so 7, and an additional damage by 60%. Now the MP5 is in a very awkward spot right now, because honestly there's not really a decent reason to take it besides enjoying it as a gun. It's not bad, but currently the MP7 will scale higher than it if you want to put upgrades into it, and the Medic SMG gives you more utility over it. That being said, I still really do like using the MP5. I think it's a cool gun, but it's not that great, honestly. So I'm going to put the MP5 probably into C tier. It's kind of rough right now. There's no real reason as to why it exists. It doesn't really fill any role that the other submachine guns don't, but I still kind of like it. I still think it's cool, so I'm going to put it in C tier. I could see somebody putting it in D tier, though. It does need some sort of buff to it in some way. All right, and then our last tier 2 gun, we've got the Tommy gun. Well, now the Tommy gun holds 50 rounds, it weighs 6, and it does 30 damage a shot. It also has a 720 rounds rate of fire, so it is a bit slower than other submachine guns, but with a higher magazine and higher damage than most submachine guns. This one's actually not bad on SWAT right now, because it is actually one of their highest damaging submachine guns, and it scales okay with upgrades. When it's maxed out, it gets an additional 3 weight, taking it up to 9, which could be a problem with certain classes, but with SWAT, you can kind of get away with it because most of their submachine guns don't weigh that much. And with a increase in damage by 60% at max level, which puts the Tommy gun at somewhere at like 46, 47 damage per shot at max, which is not bad for a submachine gun. Like I said, it does have one of the highest damages per bullet out of submachine guns. It does have a big magazine capacity too, and the rate of fire does seem somewhat reasonable, although it does have a good amount of recoil compared to other submachine guns. Overall, I'm also going to put the Tommy gun in B tier, I believe. It's not a bad gun, and it's kind of cool, but it's still not a way great weapon overall, in my opinion. Decent, but just kind of okay. All right, moving on to tier 3 weapons, we have the P90. Now, the P90 weighs 5, it holds 50 rounds, it does 30 damage, and it has about an 860 rounds rate of fire. So it is very similar to the Tommy gun in a lot of ways. It actually scales worse than the Tommy gun, though. With its 2 upgrades, it gets a total of 28% increase in damage, but for only an additional 2 weight, so it hits 7. That does make it a much more flexible weapon than the Tommy gun. You can take it with with a lot more loadouts. The P90 is also noticeably easier to control with the recoil. I think for the additional flexibility that the P90 gives you, I would actually put the P90 in A tier for SWAT. Alright, our next tier 3 weapon is the UMP45, or the UMP45. Now the UMP45 weighs 5, it holds 30 rounds, it does 45 damage a shot, which is one of the highest damages per shot out of any of the submachine guns, and it has a 600 rounds rate of fire, so it is less than a lot of the other submachine guns. And its upgrades are okay. It goes up at max by 24% increased damage for 2 additional weight. That's not a ton of damage. It's similar to the P90 where it doesn't scale that particularly well. It does do one of the most damages out of the submachine guns though, and it does have pretty decent sights. Overall, I kind of like this gun. I use it a good amount. I don't think it's S tier though. I think it's probably higher A tier. With a little bit more damage, I could see it going to S tier, or with a bit higher rate of fire, I could see it going there. But currently, it's sitting at about high A tier. It's a decent pick for SWAT. It's not bad. All right, moving on to the MAC-10. Now, the MAC-10 weighs 4. It has a capacity of 32, and it does 28 damage a shot. Also doing fire damage. The fire damage cannot cause floor fires, but the fire damage does do damage over time. And it has about a 900 rounds per minute rate of fire. That's pretty good overall. It actually does scale okay too. With 2 upgrades, it goes up to a total of 6 weight and an increase by 30% in damage, which is all right. I really think that the MAC-10 is better on Firebug. I think Firebug can use it better because they have more weapons that it fits into easier. With SWAT, you have plenty of weapons that you can kind of fit together, so I don't think it's as good. That being said, I don't think it's bad by any means, so I'm going to put it right into the middle of B tier. Alright, and then our last tier 3 weapon is the HRG Nail Gun. Now, the HRG Nail Gun is a very interesting weapon for SWAT. It weighs 5, It has a total capacity of 42, just like the Support and Berserker's Nail Gun. It has the ability to ricochet, just like them as well. It can pierce through multiple enemies. And this one does 40 damage a shot, and its secondary fire fires out 3 rounds at a time, similar to a shotgun. Now, that actually makes this gun very strong. And with 40 damage per shot is one of the highest damages out of all of SWAT weapons. It also scales decently well. At max, it goes up by a weight of 3 for 30% increase in damage, so it goes up to a weight of 8. That's not bad, especially for the amount of damage you do and the really high damage per second that you can do in the shotgun mode. Now, shotgun mode is less accurate and it does shoot slower. The regular rate of fire for this thing is about 850 rounds a minute. In shotgun mode, it shoots about 500 rounds a minute. So slower with the shotgun, but much more damage per second with it as well, because you're firing out 3 at a time. You also have more spread when you're shooting the shotgun for obvious reasons. You can also, like I said, with this gun, just like the regular nail gun, you can bounce it off walls, ceilings, floors to ricochet into enemies and pierce through them. This gun is extremely good with SWAT and probably one of their best weapons right now. I would put this at the top of S tier at the moment. It is very good. All right, now we're going to be taking a look at the KRISS, or the Vector, whatever you want to call it. It weighs 6, it holds 33 rounds in the magazine, and it does 33 damage a shot. It has a massive 1200 rounds per minute rate of fire, which is very high. It's tied with the highest rate of fires in the game. The only other two that match it are the minigun for commando and the dual Glock 18s for gunslinger. Now, this gun is probably one of SWAT's best weapons in the whole game. 6 weight, it can upgrade once, giving it 7 weight, and then it increases by 15%. 15% is not a ton on submachine guns, but it's not bad either. It's usually the solution that most people point to for most things, although that's kind of changing with the nail gun, because the nail gun is better at killing big things than the KRISS is, which makes some of these other weapons more viable if you wish to match them with the nail gun, which is understandable. But even so, I still think that the KRISS is going to go into S tier. A bit above the Medic SMG, a bit below the nail gun, because the KRISS is very strong. And that brings us to our final weapon for SWAT, which is the Riot Shield and Glock 18. And the Glock 18 is a full auto pistol, but it counts as a machine gun. And the Glock does 28 damage a shot. This whole thing weighs a total of 8, and the Glock holds 33 rounds in it. The Glock also has a very high rate of fire of 1100 rounds a minute, having one of the highest rate of fires in the game. Now, you also have the Bash from the Shield. The Bash from the Shield does 35 damage, which is not very much. And when aiming with the Glock, then you also get the shield effect where you can block yourself, blocking 60% of the damage that you would take from, I think, all sources. That being said, this is a very awkward weapon in my opinion. I don't really like using it that much. The Glock 18 is I think it's actually the least accurate gun in the game in terms of spread. The high rate of fire is kind of cool at close range. At longer ranges, though, it's very difficult to hit shots. Close range, not so bad. The shield, I like the idea of being able to block with it. I think it's a cool idea, but aiming down sights just slows you down. I don't know really how I feel about this weapon. On one hand, it's kind of cool. I like the idea of it, but in execution, I really don't like it all that much. It's not that great of a weapon overall. I'm going to put it at the bottom of B tier. So looking back on this, maybe I'll put the Tommy gun up to A tier compared to the other weapons. I think this is where I'm going to put everything for SWAT's weapons overall for them. Yeah, I think this is going to be my SWAT list. Tell me what you guys thought of it, where you would put stuff, at least compared to the other SWAT weapons, maybe not compared to all weapons. But we will do that list later on as well after we do Survivalist. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Thanks everybody for coming and watching. I really do appreciate it. And I will see all of you guys in the next video. So till then, stay cool and bye.